Good evening and welcome to the Coon Rapids City Council meeting for Tuesday, April 16th, 2019. If you could please rise and join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Griscoviac?
Here.
Councilmember Kicker?
Here.
Councilmember Demmer?
Here.
Councilmember Geisler?
Here.
Councilmember Johnson?
Here.
Councilmember Wells?
Here.
Mayor Cook?
Here. Thank you. First item on our agenda, that is to adopt this evening's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Demmer to adopt the agenda. Any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? And the agenda is adopted. And we are, item one of our favorite things to do is to have Chief Wise here and introduce us.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. As is our tradition, whenever we have new police officers working for the city of Coon Rapids, is that we have a swearing in, and this swearing in process, thankfully you're here to do that for us. But it's a great opportunity for us to get a chance to introduce the new officers to the community so that they work on building a relationship, because as you know and as we've discussed for a long time, that relationship between the bond really between the citizens and its police department is an important one for our community. I'm going to introduce our two officers here, and standing immediately to my left is Danielle. Danielle grew up in Sartell, Minnesota, graduated from Sartell High School. After high school, she attended Gustavus Adolphus College, where she graduated with a BA with a double major in political science and biology. And now she's a cop. You never know. Along the way, she began working a variety of customer service jobs to include several years as a manager. And frankly, customer service is a great work experience for somebody to understand policing. Because in the end, policing is really about serving the community. It's just the needs that are different. She developed an interest in public safety and became a dispatcher for Minnetonka Police Department, and quickly figured out, in her words, that she was working the wrong side of the radio and went back to school because she wanted to be a police officer. And although she was being actively wooed by the Minnetonka Police Department to work there, ultimately Danielle accepted a job here in Coon Rapids where she and her family make their home. Always like that local connection, you know that. Absolutely. I say it repeatedly. Now, Doug, farther to my left, was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and moved around the western United States a little bit until he moved to Coon Rapids in first grade. So we have the local boy in this one. Doug graduated from Coon Rapids High School. After high school, attended Minnesota State Mankato, and later transferred to Metropolitan State University, where he earned a BS in criminal justice. Doug also worked a variety of service jobs, one of which being a bartender, which is also an excellent job learning how to manage people. That sort of stuff catches my attention because it's a tough job. It's tough business with people who may be in varying degrees of clarity in their minds. But while pursuing becoming license eligible in law enforcement, eventually he landed a job with the Anoka Police Department as a security officer in the state hospital, another challenging job, but then became a deputy with Isani County, where he worked for almost 9 years before coming back to Coon Rapids, the place he grew up. Eventually, while on that career path, he realized he had his passion for working for his community where he grew up. And now we have him here, and we've hired them both as police officers. We're very happy to have Danielle and Doug become members of our department. Their first day of patrol officers was in December. Since that time, they've been trained and evaluated on a daily basis, pushed to excel at meeting the unique needs of the city of Coon Rapids. Our training program is designed to be extremely stressful to make sure that we've hired the right people. And one thing I can speak from the voice of experience, having started in another police department before I came to Coon Rapids, is it's really tough when you've learned to do things a certain way and then you come and see that the town you're in does things slightly differently. It's a big challenge. Danielle, same boat, working for Minnetonka for a couple years, we asked them to do a lot. But these are two very good hires, and we're very happy to have them be members of our police department, which is where we are now. So Danielle and Doug, tonight you're officially graduating from our field training program. Symbolically, we removed your trainee badge as you've now earned your permanent badges, number 162 and 163 respectively. And as I always say to officers that are new to our department, is that there's two things to remember. As you pin this badge on, one is the faith that all of us have in you to serve the community, including the city council. The second thing to remember is that this badge belongs to the citizens of our city. They're entrusting you with this badge. They have very high expectations, but I know that you two are both well qualified to meet those expectations, and we're excited to have you hit the road on your own. So, both of you become members of a proud organization of dedicated professionals, and on behalf of that organization, I personally welcome you to our police department family, and know that all your peers and colleagues will do everything we can to help you be successful here. So with that, our first pinning will be Danielle. And Danielle is shooting to have her son, Cooper, pin her. She's a brave woman.
This must be the first time we've drawn blood.
Yes. With the assistance of her husband, Jeremy. So I'll have you two, or you folks, step to the middle here. All right, Cooper, you ready? It's nice and strong.
Nicely done. You know what, I'll let you hold the mic with your left hand and raise your right hand. You ready?
Yep.
All right. I, Daniel Forsman,
I, Danielle Forsman,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota
and discharge faithfully the duties of a police officer for the city of Coon Rapids
the duties of a police officer for the city of Coon Rapids
in the county of Anoka
and the county of Anoka
and the state of Minnesota
and the state of Minnesota
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mayor, and for our second pinning for Doug, it'll be his wife, Kimberly. So, Kimberly, I'm going to hand you his new badge.
Not nearly as much drama that time. Did you prefer Doug or Douglas?
Douglas is fine.
All right, nice to meet you. I'll give you the mic for your
Yep.
left hand. All right. I, Douglas Barron,
I, Douglas Barron,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota
and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota
and discharge faithfully the duties of a police officer
and discharge faithfully the duties of a police officer
for the city of Coon Rapids
for the city of Coon Rapids
in the county of Anoka
in the county of Anoka
and state of Minnesota
and state of Minnesota
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And they're off. Thank you all for coming. We should probably start keeping records to see if we ever get anybody younger than that to pin somebody.
I just heard they have cupcakes. Do we have a fast meeting?
Move for an intervention.
Maybe. All right. We are on to the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Demmer,
move to approve the minutes from the April 2nd, 2019 meeting.
Second.
motion by Demmer, second by Johnson to approve the minutes of the April 2nd, 2019 meeting. Any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Next, we have two items on our consent agenda. The first one is to accept a drainage and utility easement from E&R Investments LLC as part of the construction of the new self-storage facility near 101st Northwest and Foley Boulevard. The new storage facility will be located within a portion of the easement that has been recently vacated by the city. And as a condition of the site plan for the self-storage facility, a new 20-foot wide drainage and utility easement must be reestablished. Such easement has now been provided by the property owner to the city. So we will be accepting an easement for water main purposes from E&R Investments LLC over, under, and across Lot 2, Block 1, Cardinal Heights, Plat 2. And the second item on the consent agenda is to adopt Resolution 19-45, accepting the Coon Rapids 2019 Member City Grant Agreement. And the city participates in a regional convention and visitors bureau known as Twin Cities Gateway and receives an annual community member grant. The grant is based on the local option lodging taxes collected by the city and other member cities. The city of Coon Rapids will be receiving $20,831 from the 2019 Member City Marketing Grant, and the city may use the grant funds for any purpose as specified and in accordance with Minnesota state statute governing the local option lodging tax and the established criteria identified by the Twin Cities Gateway Board. The city may choose to use the grant funding for the promotion of an event, activity, or facility, and as directed by council, 90% of this amount, or $18,747, will be directed to the Community Strength Foundation. The balance of $2,083.10 will remain in the contract grants activity in the general fund. And the only thing that I had was on the actual member city grant agreement. I'm pretty sure there's a typo on there because it says by blank City of Anoka.
Mr. Mayor, yes, it does, and we've gotten, since the packet went out, we've gotten the corrected version, and that's what's in the packet for signature.
Very good, thank you. So,
Your Honor,
Councilmember Kicker.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Kicker, second by Demmer. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. You had that look on your face, Councilmember Griscoviac. I thought you were going to have a question. We are up to item 5 under bid openings and contract awards, and that's to consider a contract award for 2019 Street Maintenance Program Project 19-5. Mr. Hammer, you want to hit the highlights on this?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is the annual street maintenance program. North Metro Consortium, the city of Coon Rapids administers this for about 10, 12 different cities. This includes chip sealing, fog sealing, pavement markings. Let's see, what else do we have in here? Pavement markings, crack sealing, fog sealing. I think I touched on them all.
Striping.
So the city does most of that. I mean, we're out of all of these cities, we do somewhere between 15 and 20%. This year, we're proposing about 8 miles of fog sealing and about 7 miles of chip seal. Last year, we tried some fog sealing on the cul-de-sac bulbs, so we didn't end up with people coming in with buckets of rocks that end up in their yards. We're phasing more towards that way. The fog seal seems to be holding up better, especially on the collector roads. So the city of Coon Rapids portion of this is roughly $400,000. All the member cities have taken their 30-day review period and said they are in for the planned quantities. So it's all left to just award contracts, get pre-construction meetings going, and start in on another wonderful construction season.
Mr. Himmer, what's the scoop with the two different kinds of aggregate? Do they just prefer a different color in some communities, or do they think it's got a different wear?
Well, there's two pieces to it. One is the color, and the granite is a little more angular, so the feeling is that it embeds better into the oils. We haven't seen much of a difference either way in our situation here. So that's why we always bid it, because there's the debate of who wants which kind, so we just bid it both ways, and then they get to select which they choose.
Okay, very good. Council, any questions, Mr. Himmer?
Your Honor,
Councilmember Demmer?
I normally like to do this because the last couple of years, Sir Lines a Lot has won.
No more.
They didn't win, but I at least had to say their name.
I knew you had to work it in
Yeah, I
somehow.
gotta get it in there. But because of that, then I have to do this whole thing with all the numbers. I move to approve the following resolutions. Resolution 19-5 sub 9A, awarding a contract to Allied Blacktop Company for bituminous seal coating in the base bid amount of $1,596,594.26, and an alternate amount of $1,590,961.48. To also adopt Resolution 19-5 sub 9B, awarding a contract to AAA Striping Service for pavement markings in the amount of $267,706.88. Also move adoption of Resolution 19-5 sub 9C, awarding a contract to Allied Blacktop Company for crack sealing in the amount of $293,971.97. And to also move adoption of Resolution number 19-5 sub 9D, awarding a contract to Allied Blacktop Company for fog sealing in the amount of $298,483.70.
Second.
Motion by Demmer, second by Geisler. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. I was thinking about working my question in about the streets in that one, but I'll wait until other business, all the ones that have blown up. Item 6 is to consider adoption of ordinance 2220 to change the zoning from PUD/Port/River Rapids Overlay to Port/River Rapids Overlay. That's Planning Case 19-6, 100th Avenue and Bluebird Street, City of Coon Rapids. And that really just seems like housekeeping since there's nothing there.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Demmer?
in Planning Case 19-6, move to approve ordinance 2220, approving the proposed zone change to eliminate the PUD designation based on the following findings. 1, the previous development that was approved with the PUD has been demolished. The site is part of a larger redevelopment project, and therefore the previous PUD zoning is no longer appropriate. 2, the proposed rezoning is compatible with the adjacent land uses and zoning. And 3, the proposed zone change would not have an adverse impact on the area. Hopefully we even agree it's a positive impact.
Second.
Motion by Demmer, second by Kicker. You kind of left that sentence hanging. I thought, is there more? Any discussion?
All those double negatives.
Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Item 7 on our agenda this evening is to consider a joint powers agreement with Anoka County for Coon Rapids Boulevard Reconstruction Project 18-13. And Mr. Hanson is not here to touch on this, so Mr. Himmer?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it's kind of a long-awaited piece of infrastructure on Coon Rapids Boulevard, roughly the East River Road split to Egret Boulevard, in conjunction or in anticipation of the Port Riverwalk redevelopment. New traffic signal at Avocet Street, which will now be Zilla Street as part of the reconstruction because of some roadway realignment. An updated signal at Egret. Streetscape, still in some negotiations on some median plantings, but there will be something in the median through that stretch. Street lighting, some widening, shoulder additions. And so this is a city-run project, so it's kind of the opposite of what our typical joint powers with the county is. They're paying us 8% engineering, we're managing it. Roughly 60-70% of the costs are borne by them, and the rest are the responsibility of the city. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on the matter.
Do we have to take any action to go with the galvanized traffic lights? I see that they're in here, and I know that was the direction we had talked about going earlier. Was there any official action we needed to take to go that direction away from the painted?
No, Mr. Mayor, that's going to become the new Anoka County standard. So instead of talking about colors or the greens or the yellows or the blues or the browns, we concur that those kind of hold up the best, and we would agree that we just go with their standards. Then there's no future cost for us for maintenance in perpetuity.
Excellent. All right. Council, questions, discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Geisler?
I will make a motion to approve the execution of a joint powers agreement with Anoka County for the improvements to Coon Rapids Boulevard, County State Anoka Highway 1, CSH 1.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Wells. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Sidewalks. You wanted to ask about sidewalks, Councilmember
No, I'm
Downey?
just super excited for one.
Oh,
Instead of a goat trail.
On the north side there?
Yeah.
yeah. I just saw that, I noticed that one part in here that they're not gonna pay us the 5% unless we bill them for it. So I'm hoping we remember to send them a bill for that, upon written demand by the city. Yeah. All right, item, what do we had? Had a lot of things marked up in that one. Item 8 is to consider resolution number 18-13 sub 8, approving plans and specifications for Coon Rapids Boulevard improvements and authorizing solicitation of bids. Mr. Hammer?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is the aforementioned project that the joint powers agreement was just approved. Again, new traffic signals at Egret and Zilla Street, sidewalk along the north side of Coon Rapids, well, I guess it's the northeast side, and the new trail on the southwest side. Again, street lights similar to what was done down at Springbrook, basically the same type of design. Boulevard trees, some median landscaping, lane widening, turn lanes, shoulders, and Anoka County has added some work up to the bridge up and over East River Road. So they'll be doing some redecking, adding a concrete median barrier instead of just the median that's out there today where you get all the weeds growing in the cracks. It's going to be more of the vertical type Jersey barrier type separation. And so that's why more costs were attributed to them. And some of the stormwater component will be done as part of the Port River Walk. That's the city's responsibility. And that will be done as part of the grading with Central Homes and some of the future public improvements. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Kind of a side question. So the Metro Transit bus stop, it seems like they're always after the intersection. They always put the stops after the intersection. But I see the new one at Zilla Street will be before the intersection. I assume that's to line up with the crosswalk. Is there any other reason that MTC normally along that boulevard has them after the stoplight? I figured it was to keep them out of the right turn lane.
That's part of it, and they likely will stop after the street or the stop signal, and that's something we it may not be shown accurately on this. They used to have 3. It was at Avocet, 100th, and Egret, but the boarding was so light at 100th. Plus, there's now going to be homes there, and are we encouraging people to run through the middle of the roadway? So because of that, we were able to discuss just setting up 2 on either end by the signalized intersections. I would agree that we probably want them to stop more on the north or the west side of that. You've got the alternative school there, and then they're not in the right turn lane for the traffic signal. But sometimes they just do what they want to do, but I will make sure I note that and see what we can do to make sure we get a pad in the appropriate location.
Yeah, and the north side is on the west side in front of the alternative school, but it was the one on the south side that is on the west side of the intersection would normally be the east side. So, all right. Discussion?
Mayor?
Councilmember Griscoviac?
Just a clarification from Mr. Hammer. It's a $4.8 million project. The county's picking up 2.8 of it. The city shares $2 million of it. But we're getting all this infrastructure upgrade with no effect on our general fund. Can you just kind of explain that a little bit for us?
Yeah, Councilmember Griscoviac, members of the council, we've got some expiring TIF funds from this area. And so in addition to this infrastructure, the public infrastructure as part of the center redevelopment also will be TIF eligible. So no tax implications, no enterprise funds. This is all just expiring TIF from past development projects.
Great, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Your Honor,
Councilmember Kicker.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt resolution number 18-13 sub 8, accepting plans and specifications for Coon Rapids Boulevard reconstruction and authorize the solicitation of bids.
Second.
Motion by Kicker, second by Demmer. The discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Item 9, we're considering resolution 19-43, authorizing the transfer of funds. And it's, Mr. Stemwell, it's just kind of a lot of cleanup, right? Is shuffling around?
Yeah, Mayor, Council, I'd say for the most part, this is a standard process in terms of cleaning up for the 2018 budget. The one thing that probably sticks out here a little bit more than some previous years is the amount above our 45% that we're transferring into facilities construction. And there are a couple of things. One is sort of an oddity and one is sort of personnel related. On the personnel related front, 2018 was a very substantial year in terms of processing recruitments for us. We had a lot of open positions, a lot of retirements, and so a couple of things happened there. With the retirements, you know, we're spending less on the next person that comes in more than likely. And I think what we also found, especially in 2018 and it's continued into 2019, is the amount of time it's taken to hire positions has doubled, sometimes maybe even more. I know Mr. Himmer can attest to the fact that every once in a while we've had to advertise for a job a second time, maybe a third time, because the applicant pool isn't what we want, or we've interviewed and haven't selected a candidate. And so then you add up that salary, health benefits, all those things every time that happens. And so that's the biggest contribution, I'd say, to the increase in 18. I'd say we're looking into 19, we're experiencing some pretty similar things. As well as there are times, I know it happened in 2018, where we intentionally hold open some positions to decide from a structuring standpoint if it's truly what we want to do. And so some of that is mixed in. On the revenue side, the oddity I mentioned, you'll well remember, is the hailstorm of July of 2017. And so as we develop the 2018 budget, really our revenue forecasts are completed in that May and June timeline, not necessarily knowing even when it happened in July what the full impact would be. And our finance director, Fran Hansen, provided me some information that on average, in a given year, building permit revenue runs around $550,000 to $650,000. Well, in 2018, it was $1.2 million, and in 2017, it was $1.6 million. And if you've read our community development reports that we send out on a monthly basis, you see those big spikes for those 2 years. And what we've also seen is now we're back to more of those average levels. And so I think from a revenue standpoint, notwithstanding some unknown projects, big projects that come in, at least on that residential side, things will normalize a little bit. On the staffing side, it's a very competitive market out there in terms of the job applicant pool. And so those are some things we can talk, I think, as we get into budgeting discussions on what really is the best way to approach that staffing. There are some options there. You don't have to budget at 100%, but it's a little bit of a give and take. If you don't budget 100%, and you start to realize more of those actual costs, and you get the one-time savings up front, and then you're kind of back to where you started in years after that. So otherwise, I'd say beyond that, we've been around more closer to $1 million on that transfer the last 5 or 6 years, except for in 2015 we were about $300,000. This year it's at $1.575 million, which is certainly higher than an average year, and I think it's largely because of that revenue oddity that I mentioned, and then the staffing challenges that we've had in the last year and a half. And with that, I think if you have any more specific questions, I know Fran would be happy to answer them.
She's queued up. All right. Any questions, discussion, motion?
Your Honor,
Councilmember Wells?
I just think it's worth a discussion. We put this money in the facilities fund because the councils a long time ago decided to do that. There's nothing that requires us to do that, and it may be good practice. It may also be good practice once in a while to cut the levy for the next year. I just think it's worth talking about, and not just, monkey see, monkey do, just put it in the facility fund because it was started doing that 20 years ago.
Mayor?
Councilmember
No, I would agree with that. I mean, this is a big chunk of money this year. I think it was fairly sizable last year too. So now I'm starting to see this pattern of this moving into the facilities construction fund. So the other funds, I can see those moving, but in this particular case, I think it might be best to bring that in front of a work session for the council that we could talk about that particular fund in general. And then I do have a question on the compensated absentees fund. So there's $204,000 from the general fund going into the compensated absentees fund, and this is to fund liability for unused sick days and unused vacation days. And I had a question on this just a month and a half ago when we approved the new benefits program for some of the unions. I'm seeing that we now have a $2.5 million liability for unused sick and vacation days. And it's growing every year. I'm just wondering if that's something we should be concerned about, something that we should look at, maybe in the next negotiation. I mean, those benefits for sick days are really designed for well-being for the employees, making sure that people aren't coming in sick. I don't think it was ever necessarily designed to be a nest egg upon retirement. So did we expect to have to move $200,000 into that fund?
Mr. Stemwedel?
Mayor, council, and Fran's probably got some more of the detailed background on that, but I'd say generally, yes, that it's a usual thing as, our sick leave amounts and our vacation are capped. And so there's a maximum amount that an employee can receive upon, retirement or leaving the city. And, but that doesn't mean some of those accounts don't ebb and flow, right? If people have a little more vacation one year than the next or a little more sick leave, biggest probably part of that too is just the cost of living increase. So even if the numbers don't change, the value is going to change over time just based on those cost of living increases that we provide. And Fran, I don't know if there's anything else that I've missed there.
No, I think that's it. Yeah, when the cost of living goes up, we calculate that based on the current salaries, so it's going to increase.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Geisler?
So just, I know that we do this housekeeping kind of at the end of the year, and I'm assuming or would like to ask if we don't already do it, that when we are looking at doing the budgets and the approvals, that we're really taking, a 5-year look back of, have we been over budgeting for these certain funds over and over and over? And while I know, some of it's like $10,000, which in the grand scheme of the huge budget is minuscule. But when you get to some of the bigger numbers, are there things that we are doing that we can learn from the past and look at saying, just because there was X budgeted last year, we're going to budget X again this year? And if we've always had an overage, maybe it should be X minus something, so we can be a little bit closer to these numbers. And so I would like to see that when we look at the budget, to see that this is what we're going to be budgeting for this fund. Have we in the past been over budgeting, and how have we adjusted for that case?
Mr. Stemwedel?
Mayor, council, that's a fair conversation to have. I think there are certain things that are hard to predict. There are others that you're right, you might be able to find some consistency with and decide, can we tighten that up a little bit? And I think we'll have an opportunity to look at that closer this budget cycle. One of the things that we're going to be working hard on between now and we present the budget to you in August is that facilities construction fund. We underwent a facility study last year, which, as you might remember, did have some larger price tags. And so one of the conversations we have to have is, what is the best way to approach that funding? The sweeping excess dollars into facilities construction fund is unpredictable. As I mentioned, one year we had 300,000, one year we have 1.5 million. It's hard to depend on that if you're developing a 10-year plan. So we could look at options where, maybe you have a levy for that in some years, and if you do have excess, then you don't have to activate that levy, in the following year because you had more that you swept over than you were anticipating. So I think all those things are in play. And on that side, at our May work session, I do anticipate having kind of a budget kickoff meeting with council just to start the conversation. Certainly it'll be a very high level conversation at that point, but really want to get your ideas and thoughts on how we approach the 2020 budget. As staff level, we just started that process. This week, we had our budget kickoff meeting, but to talk about some of the things we see coming in the 2020 budget, to get your ideas about what we should be anticipating, so that come August, we're all on more or less the same page with what you're seeing, so.
As you were talking about the budget, I thought, it's April, you're starting.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, Joan, do we have a motion on this yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a
Councilmember Geisler?
motion to adopt Resolution 19-43, authorizing the transfer of funds.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Demmer. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion carries. Item number 10 is to consider Resolution 19-42, reallocating the 2018 general fund budget and amending the 2018 and 19 budgets. Fran or Matt, anybody want to, or you want me to just read this really brief, detailed little thing here?
Mr. Mayor, I can explain this a little bit.
Ms.
In
Hanson.
November, we do the preliminary transfer, and that gives us a good indication to see where we are in the general fund, making sure that we have a neutral budget or enough money to transfer at the end of the year out to another fund if we deem it necessary. And this one now is just the year-end cleanup of the funds that we didn't anticipate would have overages, and they do. I kind of call this the sharing. So if Tim's budget goes over, Mr. Himmer's budget goes over, and mine is under, then we kind of allocate it to each other's budgets to make sure that we have no budgets in the general fund that have negative balances. And in all the years, I don't believe we've ever come to council and said that we needed more money to cover anybody's budget that was over. So this just kind of reallocates it.
Sure. Just because there's certainly things that come up that
Yeah.
you can't anticipate.
Exactly, especially with the amount of budgets that we have and the dollar amount, things happen. And then there was just one extra carry forward for the year, and that was for, I believe,
The oven at Kendall's?
yeah, they anticipated buying it in November and installing it, but they had some delays, and so it didn't get installed and purchased until February. So we had to reallocate the funds.
Blows my mind how expensive restaurant equipment is. Man.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Demmer?
move to adopt Resolution 19-42, reallocating the 2018 general fund budget and amending the 2018 and 2019 budgets.
Second.
Motion by Demmer, second by Kicker. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, and that motion carries. And then item 11 is to consider Resolution 19-44, the CDBG Home Program Urban Requalification Process. And due to its population, the city of Coon Rapids qualifies as a metropolitan city, and in the past opted to receive the CDBG entitlement funds from Anoka County's annual allocation. However, we've turned that back to Anoka County, and this is our official action to do that, and the same with the home program in the Dakota County, correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Fernelius?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Any highlights you want to hit on that, or?
Mayor and council, I guess just a couple of things real briefly for folks who may be watching and aren't familiar with these programs. So these are federal programs that are funded through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. And so every 3 years we have to go through a requalification process to make sure that the county and the city are still eligible to receive those funds. Because of the size of our population, over 50,000, we would qualify for our own entitlement. But in this case, as we've explained previously, those funds were allocated to a housing rehab program where we lost our program administrator. And so really it made sense for us to turn that back to the county. It will go back into the competitive pool, and we will then have to apply for funds like any other community in Anoka County. But this covers the next 3-year funding cycle, 2020 through 2022. If circumstances change a few years down the road and we have some projects that we think are important, we can reevaluate that and have a conversation about opting out and securing our own separate allocation. But for the next 3 years, we think this makes sense for the city.
remember is that it's not just a matter of getting the money from Anoka County. It's also, we would have to pay someone a pretty, close to a full-time job, perhaps a full-time job, to administer it from our side. So the money, instead of going to homeowners, goes to pay someone so we can distribute to homeowners. So in some ways, we probably actually end up with more money going to homeowners by sort of outsourcing it, in this case, to Anoka County. So it made a lot of sense when we talked about it. I was going to move it by reading the title of the resolution instead of the sentence at the end, unless Dave shakes his head at me. Okay. I move resolution number 19-44, authorizing participation in Anoka County's Urban County Program for CDBG and HOME.
Second. Motion by Demmer, second by Griskoviac. Is there discussion?
Mayor?
Councilmember Griskoviac?
I just want to say I appreciate the work session that we had on this, the dialogue that we had as a council and with staff. Makes a lot of sense to me. I think it makes sense to opt in to the Anoka County program, and I'll support this measure.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. And we are to the open mic portion of this evening's meeting. Is anybody here for this evening's open mic? All right, nobody here for this evening's open mic portion. So we'll move on to the response to last meeting's open mic. Mr. Bauman of 10452 Mississippi Boulevard appeared at the open mic portion at the city council meeting to question staff's interpretation that an attached garage is an accessory structure under city code. It was a very good presentation. Let's see. Questioning staff's interpretation of city code that an attached garage in an LDR1 zoning district cannot be taller than the height of the principal residence. Mr. Bauman suggested that city code provides that an attached garage is part of the principal structure and it is not subject to the height limitations on accessory structures. Staff's interpretation is that an attached garage is an accessory structure under city code and is not part of the principal structure. Given that Mr. Bauman has not formally applied for a building permit and that an open mic response would not be the appropriate forum to respond to a specific application, the following is intended to be a general response on whether attached garages can be taller than the height of the principal residence in the LDR zoning district, LDR1 zoning district. Staff have always interpreted that city code provides that an attached garage is considered an accessory structure. Garages are defined in city code as an accessory portion of the principal structure under 11-201, and staff's interpretation of 11-201 is that attached garages are not, in fact, the principal structure. A garage, by its very nature, is supposed to be accessory and subordinate to the primary use, a residential dwelling in this case. Further, in the general standards for residential zoning, 11-601.7, restrictions on accessory structures provides that an accessory structure shall not be constructed on any lot prior to time of construction, exceed the height of the principal building, except when on a farm. There's a couple other things, but it really comes down to, because of the way this is written, it appears that it's clear in the code that the attached garage is an accessory structure. Even though it's attached to the principal residence, it's still an accessory structure. Mr. Fernelius?
I can just clarify. I think the other piece too is accessory use, which is an important piece. So I think what Mr. Bauman was attempting to do was have us really interpret the code in a way that we haven't done previously. And so we do interpret it as an accessory use, not just an accessory structure. So that's how we've been interpreting it for a long time.
Yeah, I think, if I
Mr. Johnson?
may, I think that, and I took a deep look into this too, because I thought Mr. Bauman raised some interesting points and interpretation aspects. I agree with the ultimate conclusion of city staff. Just because there is the reference to accessory use of a principal structure doesn't mean it excludes it from also being considered as an accessory structure. And I think when you get into our ordinance 11-601.7, restrictions on accessory structures, it does seek to incorporate in there definitionally garages as accessory structures, including those that are attached garages. And so I think ultimately it's clear. It does kind of highlight, though, the perils of drafting ordinances. And had there just been restrictions on accessory structures / garages as the title of that section, it would have made it slightly more clear. But I appreciate Mr. Bauman coming in. And candidly, one of the things that I think he wants to do is not uncommon for some of our citizens, which is to maximize the utility of an attached garage space for his principal residence and have future utility for that, for keeping things that would otherwise be stored outside during the winter, stored inside. And so I'd like to see if staff can work with him and propose some kind of ways to see if there's some way to accomplish his goal.
Well, in this case, he hasn't filed for his building permit yet,
Right.
so, then he could enter into an appeal process if it, right? Okay.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Demmer?
And, just kind of echoing that it's always good when, these resolution or ordinances get challenged to go back and take a look at them and see if they are doing what we want them to. So I went around and looked around my neighborhood, and my neighborhood has two different models of houses, sort of the low flat 1-stories and then the 1.5 stories. And I recognize that two houses right next door to each other could have very different garage size limits because of that. So one house would have to store its RV outside because it could not build a garage large enough to store an RV. Right after we had the conversation about how much we love having people store large vehicles outside, this ordinance forces that to happen if you have one house in my neighborhood, but the neighbor right next door could build a garage for an RV. And so it does cause some sort of weird things to happen. And so I think when maybe that's what we want, maybe it's the easiest way to do it, but it is worth looking into and saying, are the effects of this ordinance what we really want? So anyway, you're welcome to drive around the neighborhood and look at the different ways RVs are stored in Coon Rapids, but I'm not sure they're the way we would prefer them, and in some ways this is forcing it.
All right. I think we really covered that pretty well for an open mic response. We are on to other business.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Demmer?
So the Coon Rapids High School robotics team formed this year. This is their first year of competition. There was one a few years ago. There was a lapse, and some 9th and 10th graders formed it. And they had their regional competition a couple weeks ago, and they actually qualified for nationals in Detroit in their very first year. And it turns out that is also Worlds. So if enough, the regional championships for the U.S. and the national championships for the other come together. So in their very first year, they've qualified for the World Championships, which is pretty amazing and outstanding. However, that wasn't really what they had planned. And so they could use some volunteer help. They're going to drive to Detroit. They're going to be bagging groceries at the Northdale Cub from 3 to 8 on the 17th and 18th. So you can stop by and, I mean, it would be awesome if the robot bagged the groceries. I don't think that's what's going to happen. But
I think if they've got one of those, that's a shoe-in to win.
It might. But again, congratulations to the team for qualifying, sort of the Rookie of the Year qualification. And then please consider dropping in and supporting that team, because it's pretty amazing to do that in the first year. That's a pretty big tournament. And if you wanted to throw them a Home Depot gift card or something like that, they've been doing it all on borrowed power tools.
Oh my.
And so, just consider it. Scott Storick is the coach. He's also the industrial technology teacher, which I believe is similar to what you would have called shop. So he would be glad to take some donations, or you can give it to them in person at Cub later this week.
So you said Cub on the 17th and 18th?
17th and 18th, so...
Which is tomorrow.
Tomorrow and
Right,
Thursday from 3 to 8.
Okay.
And anyway, so congratulations to them, and thanks for representing us.
Yeah, absolutely. Be generous in those buckets. Yeah,
Got to pay for that robot somehow.
that's right. All right, other business? Wow, we got two hands. Mr. Brody, you never have other business.
Exciting. I just wanted to point out for residents that we have Anoka County Law Day coming up, and that's going to be on Friday, April 26th from looks like 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. up at the Anoka County Courthouse. There's a couple of different kind of tracks if you've got specific issues regarding outstanding warrants, or you have driver's license issues, or you can come to court and there'll be somebody there to help you out, a prosecutor that's volunteering, can help you get through that process. If you get questions about housing or expungement or family law issues, there'll be other attorneys there that are specific to those topics that'll be there, as well as probate and guardianships and things like that. So it's a good opportunity to get some free legal advice or to clear up some outstanding matters that you might have with the courthouse. If you're not in that sort of position, you just want to find out what the legal system is all about, then there'll be tours there, give you an opportunity. There'll be speakers presenting a variety of different topics on how the legal system works. So it's just kind of a good opportunity for the general public to get an idea behind the scenes of what goes on at the Anoka County Courthouse. So our office is participating. Melissa Westervelt is one of the key figures in setting that up, one of our assistant city attorneys. The rest of the office will help volunteer that day. There'll be folks from the Anoka County Attorney's Office. There'll be other departments there as well and agencies. So just to encourage anybody to come out then again, that's on April 26th, the Friday from 9 to 3.
What's the deal on the warrants?
If you got a warrant, you can come in and we'll take care of it. And likely on some of the misdemeanor and gross misdemeanors, you'll be able to probably walk out that day without a warrant.
Probably.
Likely?
Likely. I would say likely. And I would say, I can't make any promise.
Guarantee than that.
You probably want a guarantee on that. I can't
the lawyer's going to guarantee something.
You'll be able to walk out of there that day if you come in on a misdemeanor or a gross misdemeanor warrant.
All right, good.
Good point.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brody. Mr. Himmer, were you going to explain to us something else, or were you going to talk about the roads that blew up?
I was going to mention the annual Coon Rapids Ice Show next
nice.
Thursday through Sunday. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 6:30 to 8:30, and the Sunday show 2 to 4.
So what dates? So this weekend or the
Next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the 25th through the 28th.
Okay, 25th to the 28th. All right. And how many years have they been doing this? 25 years or 30 years or something? 30 years?
30th. This is the 30th, I believe.
Yeah, and it's the Coon Rapids Ice Center is just a wonderful place for that show. It's just a great fit, and it's really cool. The father-daughter one is that's my favorite one. or brother-daughter or brother-sister, however they do it, but it's cool. All right, so Mr. Hammer, I got a question for you.
All roads are just a specific road, Mr.
I was talking to our UPS delivery guy today, and we were comparing notes over the roads that have sort of deconstructed themselves, such as Exavis, Direct River Drive, 113th, Avocet,
Palm.
I missed that one. I haven't driven on it, I guess. And it seems like I can recall Mr. Hansen saying something about a certain mix of asphalt or something we had a problem with. But can you just explain to us what happened and how we're going to deal with it?
Well, there's probably a couple issues, and that is some of the oils that used to be used at that time period of construction. Also, I mentioned earlier kind of the seal coating fog seal. So in some of these instances on our collector roads, those that are wider, and we do tandem plowing, so instead of just one pass each direction, you start in the center lane and you've got the crown in the road. So the first thing that goes from that belly plow is you just scalp that center line, and that starts to peel back, starts to adhere to the asphalt underneath it, and now you start to get kind of the shaling, these shallow potholes that just start to crumble. So while you can patch the big ones by filling them, hot mix and rolling them, the shallow ones, you put that hot mix in and it just peels right back out. So the first thing is we're waiting for some of the sand fine, some of the finer asphalt to be produced so we can get some of those shallower ones. We focus really on the big, deep ones that we can get to. The shallower ones take a different mix, and it doesn't make sense to just continue to apply thin patches over and over and over again. That's one thing we're waiting on. The other thing is for Exavis Street, Avocet, Palm that I'm well aware of. We're looking at some alternatives. We want to get some cores on those just to see what really is taking place. and either look to change order something into one of our other reconstruction projects. Maybe it's a mill and overlay. There seems to be some potential dollars remaining in our street maintenance fund from the fog sealing, crack sealing. So we'll be coming back to you later in the year. We'll certainly get to making them more smooth when the appropriate material is available. But long range, some of them are probably only in that 20-year time frame. So if they're able to be mill and overlaid as an option, that's something we'll look at. If that is not an option for us, we may be looking at maybe an unaccessible improvement, kind of piggybacking on a different project. So we're trying to make it palatable and we're trying to get to them. It just doesn't make sense to throw good money after bad, and so we want to make sure we're doing the right thing. And I'm aware of all of those that you mentioned and a few more.
113th you got on there?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Hammer.
You're welcome.
Other business, Mr. Stemwedel.
Mayor, Council, I'll just mention one more thing. Next Tuesday on the 23rd, we have our local Board of Appeal and Equalization meeting, which the local board is the city council in our case. I'd just like to, mention that if there's anybody at home that has a question about their property assessment value, I think the best thing you can do really is to call City Hall, ask for our property assessment division, and they do a really good job of explaining the process to people. If they need someone to come out and view something at their property, we're happy to get that set up. Most of the time the questions we get at that meeting are related to that, and once it's been explained, they understand how their value was arrived at. They don't end up contesting their value. At this point, or at least as of Friday, we don't, I believe, have any written appeals for, okay, good. Those could still come in between now and Tuesday, but really just wanted to put that out there that if people have questions, please call City Hall and we'll help you. And if you still decide you want to appeal your value, then by all means do so.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, you don't want to start the conversation that night.
Right.
It's because the assessing department is so wonderful to work with. Just call them and they'll explain to you. They'll go through it and they'll reassess it if they have to. They'll do what they need to.
Yeah.
So, all right, other business?
Mayor?
Councilmember
Since our
Griscoviac?
last meeting, some work has started on Lions Park. So, is the park remaining open? There's still quite a few cars in the parking lot as there's some activity.
Councilmember Griscoviac, members of the council, I just did a piece with CTN late last week. There's signs up that say park closed. We are leaving open the existing parking lot, kind of on the south side of the creek. There's access to the trails going still down to the south and east. But within the park area itself, I mean, there's trees coming down, there's all kinds. It's not a safe environment for people to be. I was just out there meeting with residents earlier today. There's still people coming and going. The only way that really ends is when everything gets demolished. And I mean, we remove picnic tables, we remove everything possible we can. Now it's on the contractor to do their piece. And, you know, we talked about we're redecking the bridge. Do we just remove portions of the bridge? Well, then the concern is you get trapeze artists and other things that, so it's balancing the safety along. So we're looking at additional signage, but signage is only so good. So I think once amenities are gone, that kind of leaves a different crowd to potentially come in during construction activities. But yes, for all intents and purposes, the park is closed on the north side of the creek, and for everyone's safety, we would encourage you to honor that, take advantage of the trails and the things on the south side. Go over to the splash pad. There's some nice playgrounds over there, Riverview, Riverwind. There's plenty of other places to go. I know people love the park and they're antsy, and we just ask for some patience, and we'll be back at it late fall and next spring for sure.
I have to know, did anybody not have the thought bubble with John Candy in it? Sorry, folks, park's closed. The sign out front should have told you.
That would actually be a good sign to catch attention to put up. I like that. I like that approach.
I saw Chief Piper smile, and I thought he must be having the same thought bubble.
I like that approach.
Only if we can put a moose out front.
Right.
Yeah.
Get him a few. I like that.
All right, other business?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Geisler, second by Demmer to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.